I know that I don't need to tell you that breaking up with someone is hard. So hard that some people decide a proper breakup just isn't worth it, and so they choose to disappear without explanation instead. In other words, they ghost. But you might be surprised to find that a fear of conflict is not the only reason people ghost each other, nor is ghosting a phenomenon exclusive to romantic relationships. There are also other types of ghosting, which are more like dating a phantom that only shows up once in a while. And so today, we tackle these topics and more. Specifically, we are going to talk about 3 different types of ghosting behavior and what psychological studies reveal about the acceptance of ghosting behavior, including 7 reasons why people ghost. So be sure you stick with me until the end, because if you have ever been ghosted or you know someone who has, you are not going to want to miss this video. But before we dive in, if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract the soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions, which I call the MacWilliam method. The content on my YouTube channel is derived from my online courses, which you can learn more about through the link in the caption of this video. If you would like to learn more about your attachment style, you can take the 4-question quiz. If you like what you see and hear and you want to learn more, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Okay, so let's address our content for today, starting with 3 types of ghosting behavior. First, let's discuss this term, ghosting. So ghosting is when someone terminates a relationship by ending communications abruptly and without explanation. However, relationship expert Esther Perel suggests that we consider ghosting behavior along a spectrum that also includes such terms as simmering or icing. Simmering is basically when you let somebody simmer on the back burner. You might say things like, "I would love to see you, but I'm going to be busy this week, so why don't we just check in with each other next week?" Now, icing describes a greater degree of distance and uncertainty without cutting the cord. It's like saying, "Look, it's not a good moment for me right now, but I'm not quite ready to let you go either. Maybe we should check in with each other again in a couple of months." Now, in my opinion, I have a tendency to think that this is just being honest about where you're at. And sometimes being in a state of ambivalence about relationships is where you are at. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It also doesn't make you responsible for someone else's feelings getting hurt when they just wish that you were less ambivalent than they are, because of course that would make them feel happier. Your job is to be honest about your ambivalence and let someone go when they are not ambivalent and or find a way to become less ambivalent if that is really what you want. Now, it is their job to peace out when they realize that they're not getting what they want, and to say no to you when you try to keep them around anyway without doing any of the work. The problem is not everyone has that level of consciousness around their own ambivalence. So they send increasingly muddy mixed signals, which keeps a person hanging on the edge of their seat. So individuals with insecure attachment styles are particularly guilty of being unaware of their own ambivalence and the mixed signals that they are sending. In the perspective of the person that is simmering or icing, they think they're being honest. In one moment, they really do like you, and so they'll text you something like, "I miss you, I want to be with you." And in the next moment, they truly may not be so sure anymore, and so they text you, "I'm sorry, I think I need some space to figure things out." So they are being honest in the moment about how they are feeling in the moment. And often it is not a conscious manipulation, but they seem so hot and cold because they actually have very little agency and regulation over their own emotions. So they quickly and easily get overwhelmed and over-identified with their emotions in the moment. And they assume that that must be the truth of their whole identity and experience. And that means that they provide very little consistency. The problem is no one ever taught them how to take conscious control and or responsibility for their feelings. It's like they're saying, "I'm being perfectly honest about what is pushing me around right now. But what is left out is, and I assume I'm powerless to stop it. So you'll just have to get beaten up alongside me if you want to catch a ride on this particularly rocky and winding road." Now realize that these messages and this person's emotions are all over the map. And if you are feeling confused, it's not because of something you've done wrong, because that's just something a normal person would feel in response to mixed signals. Are they doing this to intentionally hurt you? Honestly, I would say 8 out of 10 times, probably not. And for the 2 out of 10 that they are, realize how deep the wounds must be for someone to feel that this is the only way to connect with someone. So let's talk about, why does ghosting hurt so much? Now, I would argue ghosting is particularly painful when there are no initial signs of simmering or icing involved, when the communication has been consistent or even intensely intimate right up until there is inexplicable silence. It leaves you feeling helpless and confused. You worry that something has happened to the other person with no way to confirm it either way. You might worry that you must have done something wrong, but you are left with no sense of agency and feel completely helpless to affect your own circumstances. That can leave you feeling cut off and ostracized from the relational and energetic dialogue that was forming between you, which in essence feels as if it is stripping you of your personal power. And this can lead to feeling quite painfully rejected and abandoned with no means by which to learn from your mistakes or make meaning of the experience. You may even start questioning not only the validity of your relationship with them, but of yourself as well. Aren't you good enough? Did you offend them in some way? Now, social psychologists say that this type of chilly rejection from the ghoster sends a signal to your brain that your social belonging is low, and the damage is much worse when the ghostee already has low self-esteem. Additionally, according to a 2009 study, the anterior cingulate cortex, the region of the brain that activates emotional reactions and is also responsible for cyclical and obsessive thinking, is connected to the vagus nerve. And this is the very nerve that starts at the brainstem and travels down the neck, chest, and abdomen. So don't be surprised if you have headaches, heartaches, or stomach aches if you find yourself obsessing over what might have been after you were just ghosted. Now, you might be wondering, if the experience of being ghosted is so awful, then why do so many people do it? So, why is ghosting acceptable? Well, in case you think it's just anecdotal, a study conducted in 2018 polled almost 750 people and found that 23% of those reported being ghosted by a romantic partner, and almost 40% reported being ghosted by a friend. But if we all agree getting ghosted is a pretty horrible thing to experience, then why is it so prevalent? Well, psychological studies suggest it might have to do with how people view relationships in general. In a 2019 study published in Imagination, Cognition, and Personality, participants reported that they ghosted someone because of everything from attractiveness to convenience to safety, which is actually quite a range of explanations. Other researchers have suggested that how you feel about ghosting could be based on how you think about relationships more broadly. So research on relationship theories cover basically 2 types of beliefs. The first is destiny, and the second is growth. Now, if you are a stronger believer in destiny, it means that you think the outcome of a relationship is more or less set in stone from the beginning. It's either gonna work out or it's not. And if you think like this, you might believe that you have a soulmate, someone who is fundamentally your perfect match. And this is the mindset that most insecurely attached individuals have, because it is rigid, inarguable, romanticized, and subject to external conditions. Now, on the other hand, if you're a strong believer in growth, it means that you think relationships can grow over time. If you think like this, you probably believe that all relationship hurdles can eventually be overcome. This is the mindset of someone that is securely attached, because it puts an increased sense of agency and possibility in your own hands. You would have to believe that you are capable of change and that your partner is capable of change in order to believe in growth. And of course, you would have to believe that you are worthy of those changes. In that 2018 study I mentioned earlier, they found that people with stronger destiny beliefs, when compared with people with weaker destiny beliefs, were about 63% more likely to say that ghosting was an acceptable way to end a long-term relationship. Presumably because people with stronger destiny beliefs are often quicker to end a relationship when they don't think it is a good fit. Alternatively, these results could be related to whether participants thought that they could be friends with someone after a breakup. If they don't think that they'd be friends with you, they might not have cared as much about how that person responds to being ghosted. Now, is ghosting a recent phenomenon? Because of our increasingly sophisticated methods of communication, the initial infatuation is intensified by uninterrupted connection through text messages and social media and so on, which means the intensity of the rejection is also amplified once the other shoe drops. Additionally, as a culture, we also increasingly have more of our sense of self-worth tied up in our love relationships than ever before, because we are, more than ever before, searching for purpose and meaning through our love relationships. And because of the paradoxical closeness at a distance we experience because of increasing technological advances, it is easier for us not to have to face the emotional consequences of our decisions, and thus not be challenged to acknowledge and fortify our emotional boundaries. In a nutshell, we tend to confuse empathy with enmeshment, and so we avoid empathy because we fear enmeshment. And it's not about being accountable to someone else. It's about missing out on the greatest gift human connection has to offer. The truth is, I'm accountable to myself in the end because I am the only one that has to live with the consequences of my actions most acutely. And if I am someone who claims to want a quality of relationship but does not act in accordance with that desire and then laments about there being too few opportunities for love out there, well then that's on me. And that is really what I think the issue is here, the accountability that we do not assume for ourselves and the quality of our relationships and all the bells and whistles that we preoccupy ourselves with all day long with these little shots of dopamine and adrenaline that keep us high with every new red notification button, keep us hooked up on these devices and distracted from the uncomfortable feelings that would otherwise encourage us to take a pause, slow down, look inward, and investigate what our spirit is trying to communicate through that discomfort. Now, if we can manage to do this, if we can lean into the wisdom that our emotions have for us and take responsibility for the relationship that we are most accountable to, which is the relationship to our own spirit, then we open ourselves up to truly receiving all the gifts that love and real human relationships have to offer in any context. So let's explore 7 reasons someone might ghost you. Now, while ghosting behavior is pretty easy to spot, the reasons for it are not so obvious. Here are just 7 possibilities, but this is not an exhaustive list. So the ghoster could be scared of confrontation and hate the drama that comes with it. The ghostee could be a dangerous person, a stalker, or have ill intentions, and so for the ghoster, cutting off communication without much ceremony is actually safer than attempting to communicate at the end of the relationship. The ghoster could be afraid to hurt the other person or want to avoid disappointing the ghostee, so they assume it's kinder if they just keep their mouth shut forever. The ghoster may have behaved in an unattractive or unkind way and are fully aware that they did something wrong, but instead of admitting it and facing up to the shame, they cease all communications without notice, so they never have to tell you about it. Unbeknownst to you, maybe the ghoster is suffering from depression or trauma and chooses to withdraw from everyone when their condition becomes overwhelming. And frankly, the ghoster may never have really deeply cared for you and was just using you as a source of validation. The ghoster may suffer from shiny object syndrome and became distracted and or found someone else to entertain themselves with and did not feel obligated or committed enough in your interactions to inform you of their change of heart. The truth is, if you've truly been ghosted, you will never know which of these reasons applies and which ones don't. You cannot willfully extract an explanation from someone that ghosts as a way of coping with conflicts or disagreements. They are hardwired to avoid a direct conversation or emotional honesty because they view it as threatening on some level. And there are probably plenty of sympathetic reasons for this, none of which you need concern yourself with because their behavior indicates there is a boundary that you are going to have to establish with them in the role that they have assigned to you. Now, my advice is to consider the following. What do you think that their explanation would gratify for you? What did you find yourself questioning about yourself in their abandonment? What do those doubtful thoughts reveal about your opinion of yourself and your proximity to fully and unquestioningly inhabiting your own immaculate spirit? Only you can answer these questions, and I would argue that those answers are perhaps far more profound and important to finding the love of your life than anything that a ghoster might tell you about what contributed to their insecurity and lack of consideration. Because any explanation they could give you would basically amount to, I'm not ready for what you want. And so rather than focusing on the experience of inexplicable loss and chasing after or protecting yourself from lovers that can't show up for you fully, focus on what you do want. Learn how to magnetize a lover with staying power. And if you want to learn more about how to do that, make sure you stay tuned because my next video is going to explore 3 steps to magnetize lovers with staying power. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video and you want to receive more content like this, please leave me a like and a comment below. I read all feedback and take it into consideration for future video topics. And if you are wondering what your attachment style may be, you can check out a link in the caption of this video where you will find an easy 4-question quiz that will tell you your attachment style and explain the unique struggles and challenges that come along with it. Thank you and have a great week.